Hi, welcome back to Shelf to Table and take number 3.
The magic number.
Yep. So we are finally returning. We're going to be talking about some co-op games. So our main topic today is going to be on Eternal Decks, and we're going to use this as a jumping off point to talk about our co-op games. Any good? Are they any good, Josh?
Are they good?
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, sometimes.
Maybe. So we are also going to start off with some Just Played games because we're always excited to talk about some new games we get to the table, or even some that we're returning to, which is going to be the first game that we're discussing today, and that is Nemesis Retaliation. Now, we've already talked about this one, and Josh and I think we both really enjoy this. We've enjoyed the Nemesis series overall. Our first play of Nemesis Retaliation was just fantastic, and it kind of blew the other ones out of the water for me. Nemesis Retaliation, though, on our second play, I have to admit that it fell a little flatter this time. And it's really partially because of like that mission that we got. Our mission was kind of to get to section 2 or section B, which isn't very deep into the base, and like get this thing done and then like leave or whatever. And we reached this point where it was kind of, we revealed it pretty early and it was like, oh, we might be able to just like get out of here and all win this game pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I will say there was a little bit of tension in the beginning. Like we had 2 players that got kind of like hammered by some aliens right away. And it was like, oh man, you guys might actually die like within the first 30 minutes or whatever. But, we managed to recover. And then after we recovered from that, there was really nothing pushing us to do anything. Like we were just throwing grenades down the hallways and blowing up massive hordes of aliens. And like, yeah, this is pretty easy going. But I feel like I did include the Insider expansion, and I decided to kind of throw the game a little bit and not try to win too hard anymore. And I decided to go deeper into the base and try to get everyone else killed. I didn't succeed. So that I had a lot of fun with. What did you think about this play, Josh?
Yeah, it was probably the most like cooperative game of Nemesis I've played. The more I think about it, usually I think it was the first I've played, all 3 of the Nemesis games multiple times now. And, I can't recall any situations really where like there was more than one winner. And so this one actually ended up with 3 winners.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I thought the pacing was a little bit weird. Like you mentioned, early on, we kind of met the mission objective or task or whatever it's called. And just kind of like solved that like really quickly. And I guess that's kind of the risk you run when you're like drawing random tiles to, reveal rooms. So that kind of like threw off the pacing of the whole thing a bit for me. There wasn't as much urge to like explore deeper into the facility and like get into like more dangerous situations, which I feel like is where a lot of like the excitement comes from. Instead, it was like a relatively safe game of Nemesis. I mean, at the end of it, I think I had most of my health still, and things were going pretty smoothly overall. I did really like the Insider expansion and having like that additional kind of like the story beats that brought, and also it kind of did a little bit to like speed up the pacing. I think the Insider set off the auto destruct sequence.
Yeah, and that's a good call out because the Insider is pretty interesting. It will show up basically based on an exploration card that you draw, and it's going to show up in one of the next room that you draw that card on. So the Insider actually has a different story based on whatever room she appears in, which I think is really cool. So it gives you a lot of variety. I've read that if you're not using Untold Stories, which is kind of like the semi-campaign thing for Nemesis Retaliation, the Insider is just a nice way to add a little bit more thematic flair to the game. And I agree with that. I think I would throw it in any game I'm playing with, like the base intruders, like I'm definitely going to throw it in. Yep. Although I am excited to try out I have the stretch goals, alien race, like the techno cult or something, the cult of the Neoflesh maybe. Yeah. So I'm excited to give those guys a try. They're a little more complicated, but I hear they can keep a little more tension going in the game. And maybe that'll make the game not have as much variability. But I've also thought about, kind of curating the mission task a little bit more, not the player objectives, but the mission task and like maybe choosing the ones that force us to go a little deeper into the base, force us to get into section C. And that way we can't just be like, oh, we're in section B and we're done. Let's all go. Like that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Nemesis really, one of the things maybe we'll talk more about later when we talk about co-op games. I mean, I think Nemesis is at its best when you're not truly like cooperating. Like I said earlier, this was kind of strange to have so many of us working on achieving the mission task together. I think it's more fun when you have like that, your hidden objective, you're trying to like eliminate one of the other players or something like that. It makes the whole experience more exciting and adds a little more, layered like intrigue to it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, that'll do it for Nemesis Retaliation. Definitely more to come on that one because even though like that game fell a little flatter, like I still really want to play it.
Yeah.
So next up on our Just Played, this is a newer small box game from All Play, and this is Vegas Strip. Now, I had a great time with this one. It actually reminded me a little bit of Fractured Sky because there's a little bit of bluffing, but essentially, we played it 4 players and you're going to be kind of thrown on, not random teams, but depending on turn order, you're going to be given a teammate. And the theme is that you're going out and you're trying to like win at rigged casinos. Like you're gamblers, but you kind of made a deal with the dealer, and you're like trying to be like, hey, if you let this slide, just let me win the jackpot, and we'll kind of split it or whatever. So you're going out with your teammate to try to win at the rigged casinos, but not win at the secure casinos, because the secure casinos are going to be the ones that if you win at, you get thrown out of. You don't get to win anything, but the other players that are still there, they get to win whatever their betting chips were or whatever. So they don't get the jackpot, so they get a little consolation prize basically. But it's really cool because each team, so the team leader is going to choose which casino is rigged. And then there's some restrictions on what you can do with that. Like everyone has the 7 power token, but you can't place your own 7 power token at a rigged casino. And this is a problem because you can only place like up to 2 tokens at a casino. You basically add their power up for your final total or whatever. And this really puts restrictions on how well you can do at that one. It makes the other team have the advantage at the rigged casino. So you don't want them to figure out what the rigged casino is because they can easily win at your rigged casino, whereas you can't. Yeah. So you're trying to like deceive them. You're trying to work as a team to like deceive them on which one they think is rigged. I thought it was a really fun bluffing game. I will say it took longer than I would have liked, but I never really felt disengaged from the game. So that's what I think. How about you?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I'm probably not quite as like high on it as you are. I thought it was a fun game and it was like a really interesting experience. I think to me, the highlights were the kind of like the rotating teams and how, I think over the course of the game, it probably varies depending on player count, but you're playing on like 3 or 4 different teams with different teammates. And, your goal, I believe, is to be like in the top 2 at the end.
Yes.
In points, right? So you might find yourself in situations where you don't even want your team to do super well. Maybe you want to sandbag a little bit. I thought things like that were really interesting. I think as far as like the game itself, it was cool, but I don't know if it was just our game, but I felt like it got a little bit slow and got into a little bit like too thinky, which is tough because like granted, like the more you think about it, like you might arrive at like an optimal move. And, I felt like it was very tight.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a little bit slow at points. And this is probably something we'll talk about as we talk about like co-op games in general. It's just like when things get kind of like bogged down like that, it's easy to kind of like get disengaged.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it's definitely worth checking out. Like if any of this sounded interesting to you, like it's definitely worth a play. And I have to imagine a pretty cheap game. It's a little small box all play game. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. I liked Vegas Strip. And I would recommend it to most people to at least give a shot.
Yeah, I will say, like, the AP can be a bit of a problem. Like, we played it at 4, and it can play up to 6. I don't think I'd ever want to play this at 6. Like, that would be
the right number.
Yeah. Yeah, so, because it definitely, like, I noticed some of the slowness, even though I felt like I was pretty engaged with it. Like, I definitely was like, oh, this is taking a lot longer than I expected to play this game.
Yeah.
So, so next one on our list, I'm going to let you introduce this one because this is a nice little pickup that you got.
Yeah, this is going to be Libertalia. This is a game that I'd kind of been thinking, and Winds of Gale-Crest specifically, the newer Stonemaier version. It's one that I'd been thinking about for a while. I'd seen it around at like local game stores and things like that and had never really like read up too much on. Funny enough, like the thing that like stuck out to me and like I had heard about the game, things that maybe people didn't like as much, was that it's kind of like mean. That didn't really come through to me like when I played it. I didn't think it was like a mean game at all. At least not compared to like stuff I usually play.
Yeah.
But Libertalia is a really cool game. It's like a remake of an older game that was sort of like pirate themed. The new one is a little cutesier with sky pirates and animals on these like ships that sail around the sky to you go acquire treasure and do pirate things, right? But the interesting thing about the game to me is you all start, I think it plays up to 6, and you each start with like the same deck of 40 cards with like different pirates on them and different abilities, right? And the abilities trigger during different phases of each round, and it plays pretty quick. It's simultaneous play, which I really like. But you're essentially like playing your card, and it's giving you some amount of initiative, and everyone else is playing at the same time, and you're competing over these like loot cubes that do different. They have different powers, and it's kind of variable during setup what they do, but you can imagine there's kind of like a race to get higher initiative to like acquire those cubes. And the powers are all like really interesting. They let you do things like acquire additional money. You can eliminate other pirates. You can just do all kinds of like interesting, like wacky powers. And you know, since you all start with the same like 6 or whatever it is cards from that deck of 40, you kind of know what other people's options are as well. But you, between rounds, you get to hold on to some of those cards. So like over the course of the game, your options really grow quite a bit. Through each, the rounds are called like voyages, and you get like your decks essentially grow more and more like asymmetric from they were when you started. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun little game. It's super light, I would say. It's not like a difficult game by any stretch. So like anybody could pick it up and play it. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed this one. Like I would love to play it again. This falls in the category of just this hand management game, and that's like one of my favorite mechanics. Yeah. It reminded me a lot of Mission Red Planet, which I don't think you played yet, but I feel like you should play it. It definitely falls into kind of that everyone simultaneously play a card, and then you're going to reveal a card and do a thing. Yeah, that's a great mechanic. Like, another small one that we have is Pray Another Day. And that one I also just love. I just love simultaneously playing a card, trying to judge what another person's going to be doing, and trying to like make your plans work around what you think their options are. Yeah. Now, as Libertalia goes on, like you don't still have the same deck anymore. Like things are going to change. Like you may be pulling things back in your hand that other people aren't. So there's definitely going to be a little more variability that's hard to keep track of over time. Mm-hmm. But I feel like that creates kind of an interesting dynamic in that style of gameplay. So, and also the scoring was super straightforward. The gameplay was super straightforward. I felt like it was very fast and pretty snappy once everyone got the hang of it. So, definitely an easy one to table now that we know how to play it. Yeah.
I think it was fantastic. The only bad thing I'll say is I think it's out of print. I had a used copy from Noble Knight, so I don't know where it's even like it was pretty mass produced. So I'm sure you can still find copies if you're looking. But as far as like new versions of Libertalia, I think they're between printings or something like that. So good luck.
Yeah, so that's Libertalia. I'm glad you finally picked that up. Yeah, I was looking at buying it for ages. Okay, so next up is going to be one that not as widely distributed. This is Burned. So Burned is a game that I think it was actually on Kickstarter, but it failed the Kickstarter. And the publisher or the designer went over to GameCrafter to basically self-publish over there. And they did kind of their crowdfunding style thing, where it's basically people order units and the game gets cheaper as more and more people order it. So I joined in on that, got the game for, I don't know, $20 or $30 or something. And this was one that it's a hidden movement. It's a 1v1, so 2-player hidden movement game, with just a really unique design. Like I really enjoyed how this game was set up. The theme is that one of you is kind of like a burned agent, and essentially like it's kind of like Jason Bourne, the Bourne Identity, and you're like, oh, the director and the whole organization I used to work for is now out to get me, and I need to take them out first. So one of you is going to be that burned asset, and you're going to be trying to kill the director. And basically, like the game opens with, oh, you took a shot but you missed, and like the whole convoy of the director came to a stop. Now the director and all his goons pile out, and the goons go out and try to find the burned asset. The way this works is that there's going to be a bunch of location cards out. The locations have a different color with them. Now they do have a letter on them for each color, so essentially it's colorblind friendly and everything. But that director is going to go out and try to basically reveal these locations. Try to be like, oh, are you at this location or this location? And you can do things where you like enter. It's usually a 2-step process. You got to like move to a location, then stay at a location, turn into Overwatch, and then that burned asset player is going to have to put those location cards out on the table or reveal them, and what you know if like they're actively at that location or even aiming at that location, because the burned asset they have the location that they're at. They also have the location that they're potentially aiming at. So if I move into that location you're aiming at, you could potentially use your equipment to shoot at me. And that's another part of I'll let you talk a little bit about the burned asset, because you got to play around with that equipment a little bit more than I did. So
yeah, I mean, I thought this was a really good game. It was kind of a surprise hit for me. I think one of the coolest things, in my opinion, after playing a few rounds, was just like the variety and like setup with the equipment and things like that. I think both sides get to kind of like vary their kit and their loadout. But yeah, there's some very like different approaches you could take, where like you could be more stealthy or more brazen. I think one of them was called like Berserker or like Rambo. And things like that. So there's a lot of variety in kind of how you approach the game. And the cat and mouse element with like the hidden movement was a ton of fun. Trying to like plan your moves and do, it's not like an I split you choose game, but it kind of feels like one at times where you're choosing between like, hey, I'm going to give you like two options to guess like where I went essentially, based on like the colors and the letters of the locations. And even the locations, I think, were variable. Like the map setup was different options for that. So it feels like it has a lot of replayability. I thought it was a really cool game.
Yeah. It's one I'm super excited to revisit because, like you said, the director, I can choose different agents to work with me as a director. Like I had a K9 that I could throw in my deck. I had one unit that was like, oh, if he gets killed, I do damage back to you. And doing damage back to the burned asset was really good because if you damage them, that location they were damaged in stays revealed. Like it's harder for them to return there if they took damage in that spot, which is really, just some really cool mechanics with this cool hidden movement game. Took like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes per round or something. Like, it was great.
Really small box, just like a few like card decks and some tokens. And you're like ready to go. So,
I'm excited to take it out to a brewery or something and give them more plays.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to do it for our Just Play. We've played so many more games since our last podcast, but I feel like we have to limit ourselves a little bit and move on to our main topic now. Now, this is a game that has been getting a lot of hype. It's been in the BGG hotness recently. And that's kind of the reason I decided, let's just throw it up here. And this is Eternal Decks. So Eternal Decks is a co-op game with a very limited distribution right now. Portland Game Collective, I believe, is running a reprint campaign. So, maybe check that out. There might still be pre-orders up. I was fortunate enough I watched the Shut Up and Sit Down review and they were like, this game's impossible to get. And when I saw that and I saw Portland Game Collective was doing a print at that time, I was like, I'm just going to pre-order it just in case.
Yeah.
And now it became super popular and I'm super happy I have it.
Yeah, you were lucky. Yeah.
But now Eternal Decks, so it's a co-op game that I've played at 2 and 4 players so far. I definitely like it at the higher player count. At 2 players, it was a little not as good. Felt easier. I don't know. I played like the expert mode at 2 players because it was a little more streamlined and not as tense, I would say.
Yeah.
But the theme of this game is that you are all given like a deck of 5 cards, and on your turn, you basically have to do something with those cards. You have to play your cards. For the most part, you're going to be playing to these rows, and the rows there's 3 different rows that you're trying to complete as a team, and they have different rules. It's like, for the most part, you can't put 2 numbers next to each other, and you can't put 2 of the same number or color next to each other. But they're also going to have things where it's going to be like, oh, you have to place your cards in ascending order, or in descending order, or they have to follow this certain color cycle or something. So it places restrictions on how you can place those cards in those rows. And once you complete one of those rows, basically that's how you revive these Eternals. And this is where Eternal Decks comes in. Because you have those 5 cards, and basically if you do not have cards in your turn and you can't play, everyone loses. Game over. So you need to be collecting those decks. You got to go out and complete those rows to collect one of those decks. But when you collect one of those decks, you're going to basically put it into that's going to become your new draw deck, and you're going to revive an Eternal. And that Eternal is going to have a curse, which is going to add more restrictions on you. It's going to be like, oh, now you can't play 7s. Which there's ways that you can go and like generate this gem and like take care of that curse to try to eliminate that, but it costs you usually a lot of cards. You got to burn a lot of cards out of your hand to generate those gems and negate those curses. And then there's also the other part where there's this river that there's just nothing else you can do. It's like, I got to dump a card in this river. Like, guys, there's nowhere I can go. And this is a nice little hand management game with a lot of variability. I feel like there's about 5 different scenarios or so. And I think we've done 3 or 4 of them. We did like the labyrinth, which had like this cool little puzzle of colors, for the areas. We did like the gatekeeper where we actually had to like fight a boss basically, and we had to put out skull cards and do damage to him over the course of the game. Just a lot of really cool ideas in this game. I will call out that this game is a limited communication co-op game, and that's something that I think is going to be really important as we go into our co-op discussion. Basically, you're given these communication discs, and you get 2 of them, and you can basically put them on the map and say where you think you can play. You're like, oh, I think I can play in this area. You can't talk about the cards you have for the most part. There are some caveats to that, but for the most part, you can't tell anyone like what number of color you have. You're just going to use these communication discs to be like, oh, I can probably go here, or you're going to throw them down in the river and be like, guys, I can't do anything. But yeah, I really enjoy this game. I do have some complaints that I'm going to wait to talk about now, because I kind of want to start off with Josh.
Yeah, I think Eternal Decks is a lot of fun. I mean, things that stuck out to me, one, it's just a beautiful game. Like the production is really, really nice. I think like the cloth game board and the pieces, like it's just like a lot to look at in a good way. It's not like visually cluttered or anything like that. I think like the pieces you need to pay attention to are like pretty clearly called out, but it's just a beautiful game. And as far as co-ops go, I think it's one of my favorites. I think that the puzzle is really interesting. I think there's a ton of variety, as you mentioned, with the types of scenarios you could run and like modular difficulty and things like that. And yeah, it's just it's a good time. It's fun kind of solving that puzzle together. It feels I think at its best, like it's definitely like one of the best co-op games I've played. If I were to talk about like things that I don't love about it, I think sometimes the communication, and this is like this is probably what you're going to get at, in cooperative games can kind of like bog things down and like draw things out a little bit too much, or, you know, players being uncertain of what they should do. And asking, maybe relying too much on advice from everyone else, or like looking for approval on moves, and all it was stuff we've talked about in the past, probably on our Grinchmas podcast. We talked about like bad player behaviors. I think so. Like at its best, I think it's one of the best co-op games out there. I think at its worst, it's still pretty damn good. And you know, it's a fun game.
Yeah, I think that's where I was going to go with that. Like, I do really, really enjoy this one. Like, Eternal Decks I think it was in my top 10, and when I did my top 100 list or whatever, it's definitely up there. It's staying in like my top 20 right now. I thoroughly enjoy it. But it does have those things where there's a few things that just kind of irk me with the game, and it's when you run into those situations where the communication's not fully restricted, so people can do things where they're like, oh, do you think it's better if I go here or there? And I'm like, dude, it's 50-50, man. Like, just make your choice. Like, I don't know. I don't have more information than you do. So, yeah. Or you run into the other ones where it's like, oh, I don't have an optimal move. Like, I can't do the best thing possible. Or maybe that person feels like they're letting the team down. It's like, oh, I want to do the best thing and not be the one dragging us back or whatever. And, so some of those things I feel like Eternal Decks is really pushing the limits of what I accept in a co-op game, I would say. It's like, it's right at the threshold of where I'd be like, I don't want to play this. But it's a very engaging system with that cool artwork, with just that fun system of trying to revive those Eternals, trying to get a deck when someone's like, hey guys, I have one card left. Like, oh shit, how do we get you to recover or whatever?
Yeah.
Now the other issue I have with this is those curses. Like, it is real. I feel like I've never played a game of this where we've not made a mistake with those curses.
It's hard to keep track of it.
Keeping track of what, like, it's like, oh, God, I'll put this purple card down, and then everyone's like, oh, you can't play purple cards. And it's like, shoot.
And
like,
then, everybody knows what
now you know what you have. So, so I don't think I've ever played a game of Eternal Decks out of like the I don't know, 7 or 8 that I've played now, without making a mistake. So yeah, that's kind of where I want to end it with Eternal Decks. Like it is a fantastic co-op game that if you can get your hands on, I 100% recommend it. It's starting to lean into some of those things I don't like about co-ops, and that's where we're going to kind of, I think that's where our discussion's going next. And this is getting into our main topic of, are co-ops any good? We played a decent number of co-ops now, right?
Yeah, we played a lot of them. A lot of like highly rated cooperative games, like some of the best ones out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, Spirit Island we got Cthulhu Death May Die, and then just a bunch of other ones that we're going to mention over time here. And I feel like there's a category of co-ops that I thoroughly enjoy is just limited communication.
Yeah.
Preferably no communication. I don't know. There's this thing where I feel like some co-ops that run into that fully open communication. So I'm going to mention Spirit Island because that's the big one, right? Like, people love Spirit Island. I think Spirit Island's a fantastic game. I played it mostly 2-player. I played a couple games at 3-player now, once with you at 3-player, or maybe twice with you at 3-player or something. And I feel like as you get into those higher player counts, you're starting to play the game by kind of committee. Things are slowing down. You're starting to discuss more. You're trying to plan things out a little more. And some people love this. Like, some people love the act of just like working together as a group to try to solve that puzzle. But for me, like, when we get into those modes, I'm just like, let's just do something. Let's just go. Let's make this happen, guys. Like it's, yeah.
It's extremely dainty and like a brain burner kind of puzzle, and I think some people really enjoy that and others are kind of like turned away by it. And I've been on both sides of that, having played Spirit Island a few times now, where sometimes I do enjoy that puzzle, but I feel like you really have to be in the mood for it. Otherwise it can just be kind of like what are you going to do? Here's what I can do. Like, here's what I can do. Like, well, what are you going to do? And it just kind of like, there's sort of, kind of like a never ending, like the dialogue. That's why I think that, and I would agree with you that that's probably why I prefer like less communication in co-ops, or like limited communication or none. Just because you can kind of sidestep that issue. And I suppose the other side of that coin isn't great either. If you have somebody like quarterbacking and telling you what you're going to do, like it's not really fun either. So there's some middle ground to find there, with games like Spirit Island Spirit Island is like at the very, like as far as co-op games go, it's got to be like the most complex or like close to it as far as being puzzly and things like that.
Which some people do call out, like the idea that Spirit Island has so much going on that it kind of it restricts the quarterbacking problem a little bit because everyone has too much to think about on their turn, which I'm gonna halfway agree with. I don't think that's totally true, because I feel like you could definitely have a player that's like, oh, don't do stuff there, do stuff over here, like go over there and stuff. So I don't feel like that's totally eliminated. But yeah, these open communication games, I feel like they do run into that quarterbacking issue, which it's one of those things where it's really group dependent. I feel like if you just have a group that doesn't really have that issue, then great. But if you have that issue, you have that issue and don't play those games, right? Like, that's kind of where I'm at with that one. And also I feel like some players can get into the issue where maybe one player does know what's best. They played the game more than other players, and they just have more experience with it. And then they have to make that decision of, hey, do I tell people how to play this game better, or do I let them make the mistakes? Now, I'm on the side of, like, you should just let players make the mistake, but if you're doing that, you're kind of throwing the game for yourself because you're like, well, we could do better. And maybe you're not going to enjoy it as much if you're the person that knows it.
Yeah, I'd say, like, I kind of agree with you. I would say, like, as long as it's not, if somebody's, like, shooting themselves in the foot and, like, doesn't realize it, like, completely, then I feel like it's worth, like, pointing out. But yeah, you don't want to, nobody wants to, like, be, like, spend their board game time just being like told what they're going to do on each turn or something like that. So yeah, I would tend to agree with you that as long as it's not just something like totally blatantly obvious that you're forgetting, it's good to like be a little bit generous with resets and stuff like that. But yeah, we actually ran into that today in a head-to-head. We were playing Star Wars Rebellion, and a couple times I just like shot myself in the foot without like realizing it as we were kind of like relearning rules, and we were like, okay, let's just reverse that real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, and just so some other things I'll call, and we'll transition to some other great co-op games here. I just want to complain a little bit more, get the complaints out of the way so we can move on to positivity, and some of this is AP. I feel like I actually struggle more with AP in co-op games than in competitive games, because usually in competitive games, like, the player has hidden information that they're trying to process. So, like, I can't tell them what their move is.
Yeah.
But in cooperative games, when you like know everyone's information, like I played the loop with some people, and there was one person that had some AP, and they're like, oh, like taking forever on their turn. And it was like, just do this, man. Just like, you have like two options to you. This is the best one. Just do this one. But that's like I said, getting to the quarterback. Like, I don't want to be that person. So I just had to, sit there and just wait and be like, oh,
so kind of rocking the right place.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You remember your game of Endeavor, not co-op, but kind of that sitting and waiting. And
yeah.
Sure. It's just when you run into those situations, it can be rough. And then the other side of this is, like Cthulhu Death May Die. I'm going to call that out a dungeon crawler. And this happens in other co-op games that I played. But, sometimes players are kind of like, oh, do you think I should do this or do this? And like these games that are supposed to be kind of those dice chucking beer and pretzel games, like just have a good time, go and see if you can win. I get so frustrated when someone's like, do you think I should move to this tile or this tile? I'm like, just move and hit something, man. Just like,
roll some dice.
Like, just go and roll dice. Like, that's all we're doing here. Like, this is all random anyways. Like, just have a good time.
Yeah, at least when you play like Spirit Island or something like that, it is like a thinky game, and like you can at least understand that like everyone's going to experience some amount of like, I need to like really think about my options here. But yeah, when you're playing like Cthulhu Death May Die or oh goodness, like any number of like simpler co-op games where you have like 4 actions on your turn, you can move around and pick things up and shoot things. It's like, what's the word? Like, if we lose, we lose. It's not the end of the world, right? It would be, I would probably be disappointed if I never lost like a co-op game and
Yeah.
always played optimally.
And this is where I think, so Project Elite for me kind of shines in this because it takes that dice chucking and it makes it real time. And I feel like, so real time is one of those solutions for co-op games where, because they're real time, it basically forces limited communication. Like, yes, you can still talk to people, but because you're all doing things at the same time, it's really hard to kind of work together at that point during that part of the game. Like, you can plan things between those real time rounds, but during it, you're just chucking dice and killing aliens and trying not to die. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
So
Project Elite is fantastic. I don't know if we've talked about that on the podcast, but that was another one I picked up. And yeah, you're essentially on a 2-minute. It's a real-time co-op game, lots of dice chucking, and you're essentially on like a 2-minute timer. And it's like there's no time to like plot and strategize really amongst one another. You're just kind of like shouting at you might shout at each other a little bit, like you do this. But for the most part, you're just like rolling dice and going. And yeah, I agree. Like time restrictions can be really useful in making that shine a little bit more.
yeah, I think
Now boarding is one like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this one before, and I love the fact that it separates out the two phases. Like you have the planning phase and you have the action phase, and it kind of says like, yes, like you do need to do some planning in co-ops. Like you need to communicate to each other to try to solve this puzzle together. But it says, you know what? Once you're done with the planning phase, once you guys are all agreed and you're just going to say go, everyone's doing their actions, and it makes the game run a little smoother, makes it a little snappier, makes it a little more engaging. I feel like if you have someone that's playing like the leader role and being like, hey, you know what you're doing, great, let's go. I feel like it just makes the game kind of flow a little bit better than just having like everyone's turn being like, what should I do on my turn now, guys? And then next person, what should I do on my turn now?
Yeah.
So
Take Time is another one that really does that well, where it kind of separates it into two phases. Like you have a phase at the beginning where you can chat, you can look at the clock, where you're kind of like going to be laying cards face down for the most part and trying to arrange them following like the rules for that given mission. You have your planning phase. You can talk about like, you can't look at your cards, but you can talk about like, hey, this would be a good spot for like that card, or maybe we should try to like dump a bunch of cards here. But once the round actually starts, there's like zero communication about like what you're holding or what people should do or what you did. And yeah, it's nice.
yeah. Yep. And I think we're getting into, so we're through the negativity and we're kind of moving into that positivity zone here. And just diving into these limited communication games. And this is where we've already talked about, so the real time is one way to kind of restrict communication. And I really like real time, like Kites and Skyrockets. Those are two other real time games that I find to be a lot of fun. And then just other ones that are those limited communications we have word games, Alibis. I really like Alibis.
Alibis is good.
Like that one is, you have these suspect cards out there, and it's kind of like code names where each one of those suspects gets a word card, then everyone gets dealt out 2 suspect cards. So those are the people with alibis that you know about. And then there's one person that no one gets, and that's the perpetrator. So you're all trying to find the perpetrator, but you have to, on your own, create a word that links your 2 words that will let people guess who your suspects are. That way they can reduce down to that one perpetrator. And I really enjoy this part because, you're going to do your own little puzzle. You're going to try to come up with your one word, then everyone's going to reveal it, then you're all going to do that deduction puzzle. And yeah, it's fantastic. I'll move on. I'll let you go to John. I have so many other games to talk about. So
yeah, other good cooperative games are ones that have mechanics that I've really enjoyed. I mean, a big one would be Bomb Busters. That's like one of my favorite games.
Also on the hotness right now.
Yeah, it's such a good game. If you haven't played Bomb Busters yet, it's so good.
And that's the one with the wires and if you're trying to deduce out where the red wires are at. And
yeah, you're kind of randomly dealt out some assortment of wires. So there's blue wires that are safe to cut, yellow wires that are safe to cut, and then there's like a red wire that will detonate if it gets cut by accident. Everybody's looking at their tiles but can't see anyone else's, but they are kind of arranged in order. And you're kind of like guessing at like trying to deduce what other people have on their tile racks in relation to like what you're holding. So if like maybe I have a 2 and I think Chance has a 2 in a specific spot, I can like point at it and say, is that a 2? But yeah, when you're trying to like whittle down the tiles and cut them one by one until there's only the red one is left. There's all kinds of other cool stuff going on with Bomb Busters too, though, like the equipment cards and the gadgets.
Yep.
But yeah, again, like limited communication, you can't talk about what you have, and it just, yeah, it's so good.
Yeah, I feel like this is all getting into the category of just getting into the meta of the co-op games that I enjoy is the information management system. Like, I feel like the co-ops where you have that limited communication, like the crew, I'm going to call that out because it's a trick taker. And it takes trick taking, which I always feel like I feel like you don't have as much experience with trick takers as I do because I grew up in Michigan and I played euchre growing up. But trick takers to me have always been about information management. It's like when you play a card, you're communicating something to the table. Yeah. You're telling them something about what you know, and you're trying to restrict the amount of information you're giving to those other players, but you're trying to communicate with your partner in that game. So really cool system with trick taking. I feel like that whenever I play even a versus co-op game, like I'm communicating information. Yeah. Hana Makoju, I split you choose. Anytime you do that, you're revealing a piece of information to that player and you're trying to reveal just enough, but not too much. You're trying to hold back. But then with co-op games, it's kind of flipping that equation on its head a little bit. It's saying, like, you want to communicate something that reveals as much information as possible. Mm-hmm. So you're no longer trying to restrict that communication flow. You're trying to enhance it. You're trying to be like, oh, this is the one thing that's going to tell you everything that you need to know to do your turn.
I think I know where you're going with this too, is one game that does that like really well is Decorum.
Yeah.
You get to these, you're for those that haven't played it, you're essentially like, it's a 2 to 4 player co-op. I think probably best at 2. But you play like roommates in a variety of scenarios where you're trying to like decorate your shared space in a way that like fulfills rules that are assigned to both players. So like maybe my rules are like, hey, every room needs to be painted red or yellow. It needs to be like warm colors. Or like I can't have any lamps in the bathroom. Just stuff like that. You each have rules and you're trying to deduce, but you get to these rounds, they're called heart to heart. So like after 5 rounds of kind of going back and forth, trying to suss out what the other player's rules are, you get to reveal some information to them and really like read one of your rules off. And you're trying to, again, like, what's the most information, like the most impactful information I can give you out of this like bullet list of rules that I have to be following. So yeah, Decorum I think is another one that does that really well.
That was one I was going to mention. There was one other one that I was going to mention in the same category. Signal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we recently played, we only got 2 sessions of Signal in. So there's like 25 in the box, but it's a DBC game. It's a small box thing. And basically, if you've watched the movie Arrival, it's basically, you're playing out the movie Arrival. One of you is playing as the alien, then everyone else, whoever else is there, is playing as the expert, the communications expert. And basically the communications expert is just going to put out these cubes and tokens and disk and whatever out on this board, and they're going to be like, oh, hey, alien, here's what I'm communicating to you. And then the alien player has a set of rules that they're going to do where they have to process these things. And it's going to be like, oh, you have to separate these 2 components, or you got to like merge them together and then eliminate a component or whatever. And essentially your goal is, as the expert, to give the alien a puzzle that after it processes its actions, it reveals a certain signal. Basically, both players know the signal that you're trying to achieve. And when you're playing as the alien, like, you have a lot of freedom on what you can do. Like, if it tells you to move these 2 things apart, it doesn't tell you how far you have to move them apart. You just move them apart as far as you think is necessary to communicate that rule to the other player. Because you know what the rule is and you want to try to get them to figure it out, because you're not working against them. You're trying to work with them. Yeah. So you're just trying to do things in the right way to communicate that right amount of information so they can understand like what you're doing as the alien player to interpret that rule and be able to get to that final puzzle at the end, or that final signal. And I'll admit that, when I read the rules to Signal, I was like, there's no way this is going to work. And that happened when you were playing as the alien too. You're like, there's no way you're going to figure this out. And then it's just like, it's amazing when it works. And it's just, oh man, so good.
It's a great feeling. Yeah. When you finally like puzzle through it and get to the correct solution. That's a great game. I really like Signal. Yeah.
And then, I feel like we've talked about most of the games I wanted to talk about. There's so many other, like Regicide. I love Regicide. Regicide Legacy is also fantastic. But there's one that's just on my list that's super unique, just very different than anything else. And this is a Wilmot's Warehouse. Yeah. Like, this is more of an experience, a party style co-op. I don't know, something.
Storytelling. Yeah.
Storytelling. Yeah. It's a cooperative storytelling one where you're basically going to be getting these abstract shaped tiles and putting them into this warehouse. And this warehouse is, you're just like taking this tile and you're just going to be like, this is an orange, and you're going to put it in the warehouse. Then you're going to draw your next tile and you're going to be like, that looks like a straw or something. So this is a straw that I stab into the orange. And then you're going to draw your next tile and you'll be like, this is a holder for your orange, I guess. So this is the orange in the center, and then this is the straw for the orange. This is the holder for the orange, and you're just gonna put all those tiles face down, and you're gonna put down like 35 tiles or something. Like you're doing 7 a day for 5 days or something, and then at the end of the game, you are just gonna try to assign all the customers to the correct shapes on the tiles. So it's a memory game, a cooperative memory game, and at the end of the game, like I felt like we played the first round or two, and we're like, there's no way we're gonna remember all these tiles.
Yeah, I at no point thought we were going to succeed.
But then we got to the end and it was just like, oh, this goes there, and this goes there. And like, we got all 35 and it was like no problem at all. We did it in like 2 minutes or something. It was like,
it's really good. Yeah. And that's how you get scored, is like how quickly you finish. And I think if you make mistakes, you like add
time or something. Yeah.
Like that. So that was a really cool game. I would love to play that again. And it's very unique.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of games that do that sort of like storytelling, like shared experience. It's just something very different, and that's, in a hobby like this, I feel like that's nice sometimes, just to play something like truly unique.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, so just my final thoughts on co-op games here. So to answer that question, are co-op games any good, right? That's what we opened with. Yeah, they're good. I feel like there's some groups, and this is just preferences. Some groups are going to be happier with that play by committee, and maybe they're going to be big into that Spirit Island. Like, you're going to be fine playing it at 4 players, or you're going to play, I think Ghost Story is another one. I haven't played Ghost Stories, but it's another one that I hear is great if you're willing to play as a group and play by committee and be like, go through that communication structure and everything. Definitely not my preferred style of gameplay. Like, my preferred style is that limited communication, trying to communicate just enough information to those players, trying to, it's kind of that situation where in that open communication, the player is telling you exactly how you think. I like games where I have to try to judge how that player thinks and try to like get into their head a little bit and be able to do things that I think they're going to interpret in the right way or whatever. Yeah. So how about you? What are your final thoughts on co-ops here?
Yeah, I think ultimately where I land is like, there are good co-ops that are like well worth playing. It's probably not my preferred genre of game. Like, I'm probably not going to be pulling out co-ops as often as I pull out like my head-to-head like 2-player games and semi-cooperative stuff, or even completely like conflict-based games. But I think there is a place for them, and there are some that we've covered today that I think are really definitely worth checking out and are a lot of fun. I think I'd probably land in a similar camp where like I'm not usually in the mood for like a super complex co-op where there's a lot of like puzzly elements and you're trying to like do that groupthink to solve the puzzle. I think it's more fun when communication is more limited, when you're playing something like Bomb Busters or Take Time or Signal. I think those are probably my preferred flavor of co-op. If not something like, we talked about Nemesis Retaliation, which is like semi-cooperative. I think that's like probably, for me at least, something that's more interesting. I see we have like Mantis Falls out. That's another one that we've talked about before, but just like semi co-op, I think is something where there's like an element of distrust as well, is also really interesting and worth kind of exploring.
Yeah, I do find that as an interesting, almost like segue into maybe whole nother podcast episode, but like semi co-op is where I actually enjoy that a lot more because it brings out different player dynamics. Yeah. Like the interactions change up, the tension in the game changes up.
Yeah.
And I know some people, like there's one person in our group that just hates the idea of semi-co-op games. Like, he cannot stand the idea of semi-co-op because he doesn't understand why anyone would want to play semi-co-ops. And like, that is a type of person. Like, they just don't want to deal with that. Whereas me, I'm like, oh yeah, that changes up how I have to treat the other players at the table, how I have to interpret your actions. Like, is your action actually helping me, or are you like trying to deceive me?
Yeah. Maybe it's a little bit of both. Yeah.
So I think that's a whole nother genre that I'm just absolutely fascinated with. And I think Mantis Falls is one that I really like. I love the concept of Mantis Falls. I wish I liked it more than I do. Like, I brought it because the game itself. I feel like it has potential to fall flat, but I love the idea that you can start the game where you're going into it and you're either full co-op or you're versus each other, but you just don't know. You don't know what it's going to be when you start the game. So
yeah, it really gets carried, I think, by that. I know we're digressing into just talking about Mantis Falls, but that's another thing that's worth talking about is like games that you like don't necessarily really like, but they get carried just by like the experience they deliver, or
Yep.
like a particular mechanic that's really enjoyable. We were talking about one the other day, La Habana. Great game, but really for me at least, it's just like completely carried by this interesting card play mechanic, and everything else I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's cool.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with going back to our topic of co-op games, like just games that do things that are unique and interesting. Like Signal just does something that I've never experienced before. Wilmot's Warehouse was just completely unlike anything I've ever done. So, just, and I also like that just Wilmot's Warehouse, getting into storytelling a little bit. Like I like the idea that it was like it almost brought out a little bit of a role-playing aspect, except you didn't have to take on a role. You just had to develop a story.
Build a story with everyone, yeah.
Which was
really interesting.
Really cool.
Yeah, out of the ones we've talked about, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just so many out there, but I've definitely, there's co-op games that fall into that category of just, you're putting out fires, you're just doing actions, and like new things are sprouting up. Like we played Freedom 5,
I wanted to like that more than I did.
Yeah. Another one of those games with open information, but you're also just trying to put out fires the whole time with lots of restrictions and, pandemic style-y stuff. And it's just kind of...
I'm not a big fan of that. There's like a genre of co-ops that I think of where it's like, hey, you have 4 actions, you can move, you can pick something up, you can trade items with each other. Horrified is like another one that's a lot like that. I think Pandemic.
But for me, there's kind of like a threshold on complexity there. Like, I feel like Horrified, I enjoy my plays of it because it's going to be over in an hour.
I actually do like Horrified.
Yeah. Like, I feel like there's kind of a threshold on like where I'm going to stop enjoying that game. And it's like, if it's going to take more than an hour, I'm just like, nah, I don't want to do that anymore. But if we can knock it out in like 30 to 60 minutes, yeah, whatever.
And maybe that's kind of a theme here. It's like most of the co-ops we've talked about are like short,
definitely quicker,
and more on the lighter side of things, with like the exception of maybe Spirit Island. Well, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. Is an exception. That's a big undertaking.
100%. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about co-ops here. I feel like I got some good complaints in, and made it clear on the type of co-op that I like. How about you? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I hope like people are able to take away kind of like some recommendations and like suggestions on things you might enjoy. Maybe some of the games we've talked about will resonate with you. There's definitely some great ones here. Not just in the co-op section, but us talking about stuff we played recently. So yeah, that's always a success for me if I'm able to recommend something that other people enjoy.
Yeah, right. All right, cool. So I think that's going to do it for today. So thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time in somewhere between 1 to 8 weeks, I think, right? So
until next time.
Yeah. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.
Thanks.